What if I told you you're not lazy? You're just running a brain that's completely overloaded. Think about a moment you've had before. You sit down to do something that matters, something you've been putting off. You open your laptop, you set things up, you tell yourself, today is the day. And then, nothing happens. Not because you don't care, you do care. That's the painful part. You stare at the task, your mind drifts. Your hand reaches for your phone without you even deciding to reach for it. You scroll for a few minutes, you put it down, you pick it up again, an hour passes. And now you feel worse than when you started. So you land on the familiar conclusion, I'm just lazy, I don't have enough discipline. Something must be wrong with me. But what if that conclusion is the wrong diagnosis entirely? What if the problem isn't your character, but the state of your nervous system? Here's what I want to suggest. You are not unmotivated, you are overstimulated. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that means. Why your brain feels drained before the day even starts. How modern stimulation quietly rewires your ability to focus. And how to begin resetting it, without extreme routines, without punishing yourself, without pretending willpower is the answer. Let's start at the beginning. There's something quietly cruel about the word lazy, because when we use it on ourselves, we turn a neurological state into a moral verdict. We stop asking what's happening inside the brain, and start asking what's wrong with us as a person. And that shift, from biology to character, is where most people get stuck. Here's what's actually happening. When motivation disappears, it's rarely because you don't care. It's rarely because you lack ambition or drive or purpose. Most of the time, it's because your brain is overwhelmed. And an overwhelmed brain doesn't shut down randomly. It shuts down strategically. It goes into protection mode. Think about what you expose your brain to on an average day. Notifications before you're fully awake, messages arriving in streams, short videos designed to keep you watching, news updates, alerts, more messages, more content, more decisions. This is a level of constant input that no human brain in history has ever had to manage. And your brain, which is sophisticated, adaptive, and ancient, responds the only way it knows how. It starts conserving energy. It deprioritizes tasks that require effort. It gravitates toward what's easy, fast, and familiar. And anything that feels slow, difficult, or uncertain gets quietly shelved. That is not weakness. That is adaptation. The problem isn't you. It's the mismatch between your brain's design and the environment you're living in. To understand why this happens, you need to understand one system inside your brain: dopamine. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical. That's a common misconception. Dopamine is the motivation chemical. It's what drives you toward things. It creates anticipation, drive, the sense that something is worth doing. And here's the key detail: it works on contrast. The dopamine response you feel isn't fixed. It's relative. It depends on what came before. When you check a notification and there's something new, small dopamine hit. When you open a social app and see engagement, small dopamine hit. When a short video surprises you or makes you laugh, small dopamine hit. Each one is tiny, but they come fast, and they come constantly, and your brain adapts. Every time your dopamine system gets a fast hit, it recalibrates. It adjusts the baseline upward. It expects speed, it expects novelty, it expects stimulation arriving quickly, effortlessly, in a continuous stream. And then you sit down to do real work. Writing, studying, creating, planning. Building something that takes time. These things also produce dopamine, but slowly, gradually. The reward comes after sustained effort, not before. And when your baseline is calibrated for speed, slow rewards don't feel like rewards at all. They feel like nothing. So your brain avoids them, not because you're lazy, because the contrast is too steep. The stimulation gap is too wide. Fast hits, dopamine spike, baseline rises, normal tasks feel flat. Avoidance begins. That's the loop. And most people are inside it without realizing it. There's a second mechanism happening at the same time: your prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain responsible for planning, sustained focus, decision-making, and impulse control. It's what allows you to override the urge to check your phone and keep working instead. It's what lets you think in sequences, hold complex ideas, and push through resistance. It is essentially the executive center of your mind. And like any executive, it has a finite energy budget each day. Every time you switch between apps, you spend a small amount of that budget. Every time you respond to a message mid-task, it costs something. Every time you make a micro-decision, what to watch, what to click, what to reply, the account draws down slightly. This is called context switching, and the research on it is unambiguous. The cost of each switch is small, but cumulative. And most people make hundreds of these switches before noon. By the time you sit down to do focused, meaningful work, the tank is already low. Your prefrontal cortex is running on fumes, and a depleted prefrontal cortex cannot initiate hard tasks, cannot sustain attention, cannot resist the pull of easy stimulation. It's like trying to sprint with someone constantly pulling you sideways, every single step. You're not weak, you're just operating on empty. Overstimulation doesn't announce itself. It doesn't say, "Hello, your dopamine system is miscalibrated and your prefrontal cortex is fatigued." It just feels like this. Cognitively, you experience what people describe as brain fog, a kind of mental static. You sit down to think and the thoughts won't organize. You start sentences you don't finish. You read the same paragraph 3 times and absorb nothing. Small decisions, what to eat, what to do first, what to reply, feel disproportionately exhausting. This is decision fatigue layered on cognitive overload. It's not confusion, it's depletion. Behaviorally, you notice a particular pattern. You open an app, close it, open another. You scroll without wanting anything. You find yourself doing every small, forgettable task before touching the work that actually matters. You clean your desk, reorganize your files, make another cup of coffee, anything to stay busy while avoiding depth. This isn't procrastination in the traditional sense. It's the overstimulated brain-seeking stimulation at a manageable level, while refusing anything that demands full engagement. Physically, you feel a strange combination of agitation and exhaustion. You're tired, genuinely tired, but you can't rest. You lie down and your mind keeps running. Your sleep is fragmented. You wake up already feeling behind. There's a clinical term for this state: wired and tired. It's one of the clearest signatures of a nervous system under chronic overstimulation. If any of this sounds familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not uniquely defective. You are having a completely predictable response to an environment that was never designed with your brain in mind. There is an entire industry built around helping people become more motivated, set better goals, build a morning routine, use a productivity system, wake up earlier. Track your habits, hold yourself accountable, and none of that is wrong exactly, but almost all of it misses the actual problem. More goals don't recalibrate a disrupted dopamine system. They just add more things you feel bad about not doing. A morning routine doesn't restore a depleted prefrontal cortex. It just moves the depletion to a different time of day. A time management system doesn't reduce the cognitive noise you're carrying. It organizes the noise, which is different. The assumption behind most productivity advice is that the problem is effort, that you just need to try harder, commit more deeply, or structure your time better. But when the problem is overstimulation, more effort is the wrong prescription. It's like telling someone with a fever to exercise more. The effort is not what's missing. What's missing is quiet. You don't need more discipline. You need less noise. You don't need a better system. You need a calmer environment. That's a different problem, and it requires a different kind of solution. Here's what the full cycle looks like when you see it clearly. It starts with high stimulation, the constant stream of input that fills your day before you've even made a conscious choice about it. That stimulation triggers dopamine spikes, fast, frequent, low-effort hits. Your baseline rises. The recalibration happens quietly, without your awareness. And now real work, the kind that requires time, effort, and delayed reward, feels harder than it used to. Not because it changed, because your reference point shifted, so you avoid it. And avoiding it makes you feel guilty. You tell yourself you're lazy, you're falling behind. You lack what other people seem to have. That guilt is uncomfortable, and uncomfortable feelings drive the brain toward escape. So you return to stimulation. which spikes dopamine again, raises the baseline again, makes real work feel even harder, round and round. This is not a character flaw, this is a feedback loop, and the critical thing about loops is this: they can be interrupted. Not by force, not by shame, not by trying harder inside the same conditions. They're interrupted by changing the conditions. What I'm going to share now is not a productivity system. It's not a morning routine or a habit stack or a self-optimization protocol. It's simpler than that. It's a framework for returning your brain to a state where focus is possible again, where motivation can emerge naturally, where you don't have to fight yourself to begin. 5 practices, simple, sustainable, grounded in how the brain actually works. The first practice is the simplest. Create time each day with no digital input, no phone, no background music, no podcast, no screen of any kind. Not forever, not for hours, just a window. Start with 30 minutes. I know that sounds uncomfortable. That discomfort is exactly the point. The restlessness you feel during those first minutes of silence, that's your nervous system recalibrating. That's the dopamine system beginning to lower its baseline. That's the prefrontal cortex getting a moment to breathe. Boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the doorway. When nothing is stimulating you, your mind begins to turn inward. Ideas surface. Clarity returns. The things that actually matter to you start to feel relevant again. You don't find motivation by adding more stimulation. You find it by removing enough noise to hear what was already there. 30 minutes, no input. Daily, start there. The second practice is about rebuilding your tolerance for depth. Your brain is like a muscle that has been doing rapid, shallow movements for months, maybe years. You can't immediately ask it to lift heavy things. You have to rebuild gradually. Start with one task. One, not a list, not a session with multiple goals. One task, one timer, 15 minutes, no switching, no checking, no just one quick look at your phone. 15 minutes of singular focus. When the timer ends, you stop. You don't push through, you don't try to ride momentum into an hour-long session. You stop. You acknowledge that you did it, and you do it again tomorrow. This matters because you're not just completing a task. You're teaching your brain that slow, sustained effort is survivable, that the discomfort of focus passes, that there is something on the other side. You're rebuilding the neural tolerance for depth. 15 minutes, one task, one timer, no exceptions. The third practice is about how you rest. Most people rest by switching stimulation types. They go from work stress to social media, from a difficult meeting to a YouTube rabbit hole. This is not recovery. This is just different stimulation. True recovery requires genuine reduction in input. A break should feel like quiet, not like entertainment. This might mean sitting without a screen for 10 minutes, a short walk without headphones, a few minutes of doing nothing in particular. It feels unproductive. It feels like wasted time. It is the opposite of wasted time. Silence is not absence. Silence is restoration. It is the condition under which your nervous system repairs itself, under which your prefrontal cortex refuels, under which the dopamine system begins to settle. Rest is not a reward for finishing work. Rest is part of what makes work possible. Build it in. Protect it. The fourth practice is about your environment. Your environment is not neutral. It is constantly sending signals to your brain, signals that either support focus or undermine it. Every notification on your phone is a signal. Check this. Every open tab in your browser is a signal. There's more to process. Every visually cluttered surface is a signal. There are unresolved things here. These signals accumulate, and they consume cognitive bandwidth, even when you're not consciously responding to them. Simplifying your environment is not aesthetic. It's neurological. Turn off non-essential notifications. Not just silence them, turn them off. Create a single-purpose space for focused work, a space that signals to your brain, here, we go deep. Clear the visual field. Close unnecessary tabs. Remove the phone from the room if you can. You are designing the conditions for your brain to function well. The environment you're in shapes the thoughts you can have. Shape it deliberately. The fifth practice is patience with the process itself. When someone has been sedentary for a long time, you don't start them with a marathon. You start with a walk, then a longer walk, then a slow jog. The same logic applies here. Your capacity for cognitive depth has been reduced by months, possibly years, of overstimulation. You cannot immediately return to multi-hour deep work sessions and expect to sustain them. Start small, smaller than you think you should. 15-minute focus blocks, then 20, then 30. One hard task per day before you allow yourself easier ones. Gradual exposure to cognitive difficulty, gradual rebuilding of the tolerance for slowness. Don't try to go from zero to everything at once. Build the capacity slowly. The capacity you build slowly will last. I want to offer you a different way of seeing yourself, not as someone who lacks drive, not as someone who was born with less willpower than others, not as someone fundamentally flawed in some way that keeps them from functioning, but as someone whose attention has been under enormous, unprecedented pressure. You're not unmotivated. You're someone who hasn't had the space to focus. There's a difference, a significant one. Motivation doesn't come from forcing yourself. It comes from clarity, and clarity comes from quiet. When the noise is reduced, when the baseline settles, when the prefrontal cortex has room to breathe, motivation doesn't have to be manufactured. It returns on its own, because it was never really gone. Attention is a muscle, and like any muscle, it responds to the right conditions. It weakens under constant strain without recovery, and it strengthens when it's trained thoughtfully, with rest built in. You don't need to become someone different. You need to give your existing capacity the environment it requires. That's not a small distinction. That's the whole reframe. Imagine a lake. Perfectly still, early in the morning before the wind picks up, you can see everything beneath the surface. The depth, the clarity, the full picture. Now imagine that wind begins. Constant, persistent, gusting from every direction. The surface breaks into 1,000 ripples. The clarity disappears. You can no longer see what's underneath. Has the depth of the lake changed? No. The water is still there. The clarity is still there. Everything beneath the surface is exactly as it was. The only thing that changed is the wind. Your mind is that lake. The motivation, the drive, the capacity for focus. It hasn't gone anywhere. It hasn't dried up. It hasn't been taken from you. It's still there, but there has been constant wind. Notifications, feeds, alerts, noise, stimulation that never fully stops. And you've been looking at the disturbed surface and concluding that there's nothing beneath it. There is. When the wind settles, even briefly, the surface clears. And you'll see that what you were looking for was never missing. It was just beneath the noise. This isn't about becoming a more productive version of yourself. It's about returning to a version of yourself that can think clearly, that can begin things, that can finish them. A version that doesn't have to fight its own brain to do what matters. Start with small things. A window of silence. One focused task. A break that's actually quiet. A space cleared of unnecessary input. Not all at once, not perfectly, just gradually. Because the goal isn't optimization. The goal is clarity. And clarity, once you create the conditions for it, has a way of taking care of everything else. If this video offered you a different way of understanding yourself, not as lazy, not as broken, but as overstimulated in an overstimulating world, then this channel might be worth staying with. There's more here, explored at the same pace, with the same intention, no rush, take what's useful, leave what isn't, and give your mind the quiet it's been asking for.